Now, I'm going to get to the 12 signs that Trump would move into a fascist dictatorship stance if he is reelected in a moment. But I want you to just consider what you and I have witnessed in this country since this beast took over. I mean, the list is too long. I've tried to share it several times on the podcast, and it just goes on and on and on. The demolition of the regulatory state, the freeing up of the worst kind of predatory capitalism I think the world has ever seen, which has resulted in the incredible abuse of power, economic and political, to the point where tens of millions of people are being denied the right to vote, and millions of people are seeing this whole idea of net worth disappear. Not just people of color who have taken it in the shins for generations. Now it's white people too. Oh my goodness. It's everybody. Do you understand that? Anyway, if he does win a second term, legitimately or not, Jonathan writes that the ape's words and actions of the past 4 years provide 12 indicators that he would seek to replace our democracy with fascism. Now, let me just go through this. Number one, Trump uses military power and federal law enforcement to suppress peaceful political protest. In June, he deployed the National Guard and federal officers to violently evict protesters in Washington, terrorizing them with 2 military helicopters flying low near the crowd. Trump also had 1,600 members of the 82nd Airborne on standby outside the Capitol and ready tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition. It's reported that he wanted to deploy 10,000 troops to Washington, D.C. alone. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, took this so seriously that he got into a shouting match with the president over the prospect of deploying active duty troops on U.S. soil. That's one. That's the first one. Here's the second one. Trump persistently lies about voter fraud, setting the stage for him to use emergency powers to seize control of the election or challenge the results if he loses the presidential election. During a recent special election in California, for example, after a Republican mayor requested the opening of an additional polling station, Trump tweeted falsely, that means he lied, that the Democrats, quote, have just opened a voting booth in the most Democratic area in the state. They're trying to steal another election. It's all rigged out there. These votes must not count. Scam, end quote. Trump has repeatedly tweeted that mail-in voting will lead to fraudulent and rigged elections. And after winning the 2016 presidential election while losing the popular vote, he claimed a landslide victory and said that Hillary Clinton's lead in the popular vote was due to, quote, millions of people who voted illegally. You remember that too, don't you? Number 3. Trump has repeatedly suggested that he might remain in office after a second term and has offered reason to doubt he'd leave peacefully after his first term. He has said, quote, under the normal rules, I'll be out in 2024. So we may have to go for an extra term. He said that at a rally last September. And a year earlier, he said this, quote, president for life. Maybe we'll have to give that a shot someday, end quote. It's a joke tossed off on several occasions, and the power of suggestion is so strong in Trump and his followers that Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and former Trump attorney Michael Cohen have all expressed serious concerns that Trump may try to steal the election or contest the results and not leave the White House in January if he loses. That's 3. Number 4, Trump appears to believe he has the power to outlaw speech critical of him, and he calls the free press, quote, the enemy of the people, end quote. He tweeted of the New York Times and the Washington Post, quote, they are both a disgrace to our country, the enemy of the people, end quote. And former National Security Advisor John Bolton, in his book, claims that Trump said of journalists, quote, these people should be executed. They are scumbags, end quote. That's 4. Number 5. With Fox News promoting Trump's lies as truth, the president controls one of the most powerful propaganda machines ever created. During the impeachment trial, for example, Fox hosts repeatedly attacked the character and mental faculties of Democratic representatives and sworn witnesses, while focusing almost exclusively on the testimony of pro-Trump Republicans. When it did show footage of Democrats and witnesses, the Fox network frequently used voiceovers to explain or interpret what was being said rather than broadcasting what was actually being said. We did 1 through 5. Now we're up to number 6. Number 6. Trump believes that he has the power to do what he wants, regardless of Congress or the courts. He has said, quote, I have an Article 2 where I have the right to do whatever I want as president, end quote. Think about that for a moment. He also has claimed to have, quote, the absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department, end quote. And in the event of the judiciary branch disagreeing, he said, quote, I have the absolute right to pardon myself, end quote. Now, his Attorney General, William Barr, and his own lawyers have made clear that this is the administration's position, as they have rejected both congressional and criminal subpoenas for information during the past few years, ever since the Orange Ape has been in the White House. Their arguments, Trump's gang, including an assertion to the federal appellate court last October that the president could shoot someone in the middle of New York's Fifth Avenue and still be immune from prosecution until he left office. Their arguments came crashing down with a Supreme Court decision last Thursday. You remember Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, quote, we cannot conclude that absolute immunity is necessary or appropriate under Article 2 or the Supremacy Clause, end quote, John Roberts. Now, of course, that doesn't mean diddly squat to Trump, does it? Number 7. Trump acts as if he owns our government and can fire any official who defends the law. He has dismissed an FBI director and a deputy FBI director, as well as 5 inspectors general and U.S. attorneys, all of whom were investigating or considering either his abuse of power or the alleged crimes of his cronies. And this past week, you remember Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who served as a national security aide at the White House and was up for a promotion, resigned from the military, citing, quote, bullying, intimidation, and retaliation, end quote, after he testified under oath to Congress, counter to Trump's interests. Number 8. Trump uses federal prosecutorial powers to investigate his opponents and anyone who dares scrutinize him or his allies for the many crimes they may have committed. After the Mueller investigation of Russia's role in the 2016 election, Trump's Justice Department began a criminal probe into the origins of the inquiry to, in Trump's words, quote, Investigate the investigators, end quote. He tried to get the Justice Department to prosecute former FBI Director James Comey and Hillary Clinton. Number 9. Trump viciously attacks his critics and has publicly implied that the Ukraine whistleblower should be hanged for treason. During a speech to diplomatic staffers in New York last September, Trump said, quote, "I want to know who's the person who gave the whistleblower the information, because that's close to a spy. You know how we used to do that in the old days when we were smart? Right, the spies and treason. We used to handle a little differently than we do now." End quote. Number 11. Trump has messianic delusions that are supported with religious fervor by millions of his supporters. He has jokingly looked up to the sky and said, "I am the chosen one," in relation to negotiations with China. Then Secretary of Energy Rick Perry echoed other evangelicals who said that Trump was sent by God to do great things, when Perry seriously proclaimed that Trump is, quote, "the chosen one," end quote. A report in The Guardian described the evangelical response to Trump's photo op in front of Lafayette Square's St. John's Episcopal Church, which many viewed positively. One evangelical supporter was so moved that she began speaking in tongues when she saw the footage, according to her son. Speaking in tongues. God. Oh. Let me go on. Number 11. Trump subscribes to a doctrine of genetic superiority and incites racial hatred to scapegoat immigrants and to gain power. He has rallied his base with dog whistle attacks, calling Mexicans rapists and criminals. When he attacked a group of progressive members of Congress from diverse backgrounds, he stated that they should go back to the places they came from. Over the years, Trump has frequently praised his winning genes, at one point telling an interviewer, quote, "I'm proud to have that German blood, there's no question about it," end quote. And number 12. Trump finds common ground with the world's most ruthless dictators while denigrating America's democratic allies. The oppressive leaders he has praised includes North Korea's Kim Jong-un, when he said, "He gets it, he totally gets it." The Philippines' Rodrigo Duterte, when Trump said, "What a great job you are doing." Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman, when Trump said, "You have done a spectacular job." And of course, Russia's Vladimir Putin, when Trump said, "You know what? Putin's fine. He's fine." Meanwhile, he has attacked traditional U.S. alliances and allies like NATO and Germany's Angela Merkel. He called her stupid. As Jonathan Greenberg at the Washington Post titled this, 12 Signs Trump would try to run a fascist dictatorship in a second term. I don't think anybody who can still think, and I'm not talking about these Christian evangelicals because they don't think. They're like a bunch of Pavlov's dogs. But for people who can think, the idea of Trump for another 4 years, and can you imagine with the Supreme Court, let's face it, going to have a couple more vacancies? Huh? Can you imagine such a thing? No, you can't, and neither can I.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast, or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.